Hey, what's going on? Keith here from Sports Vibes TV, and as usual, I'm joined by our NBA analyst, Stephen Fox. Foxy, how's everything with you?
Everything is well. Shout out to you. Shout out to the chat. Shout out to the SV Nation. Can't wait to talk New York Knicks and NBA basketball.
Yep. As you guys can see, chat, we're trying something a little bit new. So if there's any technical issues or difficulties, please let us know in the chat. That way we can either try to correct it or just switch up and use another platform if needed. So Foxy, a lot has gone on since the last time we've spoke. There's news that Julius Randle doesn't really have much of a trade market. There's news that Donovan Mitchell, he's going to be moved before training camp, so things don't get awkward over there in their camp. And there's also some alternatives that the Knicks may choose to go after if they fail to get Donovan Mitchell. So we'll get into all that. But before we get into it, you want to shout anybody out in chat?
Yeah, Angel Torres. Hope all is well with you and your family. Phantom 2601, the one and only Still Dre, Finesseful J. Hope all is well. We'll be catching up with all of you as the show goes on. As we always talk about, you're the third co-host of the show, so have those questions and those comments coming. We love hanging out with the SV Nation.
Yep. And also with us trying something new, we're also going to try to get you guys on the live stream with us as well. So we do have a Discord. We'll put it in chat so you guys can join, and that will be an option during the SVTV lounge. So you guys keep an eye out on the chat. We'll drop the link, and then you guys can get in and join. So before we, so with the first topic we want to discuss, Julius Randle. So there's reports that Julius Randle doesn't really have much of a trade market, Foxy. And I think this team, if you look at the pieces that we have, we'd be best in moving on from Julius Randle. So I think this season, this upcoming season, is going to be imperative that we focus on rebuilding or rehabbing Julius Randle's image around the, because if you look at what the Pacers did, they were able to get a nice trade done for Sabonis and bringing in Halliburton. And if we can get Julius Randle performing back to the way he performed in 2020-2021 season, I think we can get pretty decent value for him in return. So one of the things that I'm going to be keeping an eye on is how Julius Randle plays with the new acquisition, iHeart. You know, a lot of times people are mentioning, Jalen Brunson and him, putting Julius Randle in his spots, being the point guard to set him up for easy buckets, which is true. But if you read Mark Berman's recent article, he said that Julius Randle said when he's playing with a rim diver as a big man out there on the court, it kind of forces him out the perimeter, and we saw that he was extremely ineffective with some of those deep and his 3-point shooting. So if we have a guy like iHeart out there with him, that's going to be able to bring his man outside of the paint, it should lead to Julius Randle being a better version of himself. So if Julius Randle can go out there and perform well with iHeart, I think that might be one way we can try to rehab his image and get a better value for him.
I think that's a fabulous point. I agree with you. Get that congestion out of there with iHeart and also his passes. But I also come back to Brunson. Obviously, Tibbs has a lot to do with his rotations and the discipline that we want him to have on this team. Not let Randle get away with that. But Randle's a talent, like we've talked about. You don't make second team All NBA by luck. He's a very talented guy. But if we can get him right from the neck up. And I'm hoping that Brunson is a stabilizing force, not only on the court, but to Julius, that maybe he could befriend him and just put him in his spots. What we talked about is during his second team All NBA season, he was hitting a lot more from the mid range. He wasn't, his mix of 3-pointers and 2-pointers was a lot better than it was last year. He took too many threes last year. So hopefully with Brunson and like you just brought up with iHeart and the team and stuff like that, he'll put, we talked about, getting him the ball in his spot rather than getting the ball to Julius in his spot 10 feet away from his spot where he then dribbles, uses up shot clock, defense converges, and then we don't get the best possible shot. So between Brunson and RJ and iHeart and a few others, hopefully we can have him playing the best, getting back to playing good basketball and hopefully upping that trade value.
Yeah, one thing that people are trying to connect the dots is they're trying to connect a trade between the Knicks and the Phoenix Suns. I mentioned that Julius Randle has said himself that he kind of hinted that he may operate better on the court with a big man that can, knock down the three and give better spacing. So there have been some rumblings that, Suns might be a good trade partner. Bring in a guy like Julius Randle who can play next to a guy like DeAndre Ayton, can space the floor, can knock down perimeter shots. So that might be an option, an avenue as a trade partner when it comes to Julius Randle once we can get him to perform a little better. I mean, if you see the drop off, what he was able to do last year and the year before, which some say isn't a true indicative of what he can be because there was some different circumstances that the players had to deal with that they aren't going to deal with regularly. That was a bubble season. But if you look during the 2021 season, he averaged 24.1 points, 10.2 rebounds, 6 assists, and he shot 45% right around 46% from the field and 41% from three. But if you look at what he did in 21-22, only averaged 20 points per game, 9.9 rebounds, 5.1 assists. And if you look at the shooting percentages, they were definitely a big drop off from what he gave us the year before. He only shot 41% from the field, and he shot a paltry 30.8% from three. And you can see his field goal percentage equaled what he shot from three year prior. So that just shows you how big of a drop off. So, and I don't know if we'll be able to get to the Julius Randle that we saw shoot 41% from three, but I definitely don't think that the norm is going to be a Julius Randle that shoots 31. Maybe he can shoot a 34, 35% at a much lower volume. We can try to get him to operate more so in the paint, and I think that alone, trying to get him closer shots to the basket, is going to help that field goal percentage immensely. But because I think the last 2 years he had field goal percentages in the 40, but you typically see Julius Randle with a field goal percentage right around the 55, 56%. So hopefully when he's sharing time out there with iHeart, it'll allow him to get some easy looks. And also, if we see that Julius Randle is performing well when he has a floor spacing big man out there, maybe that allows the coaching staff to give Mitchell Robinson the green light to at least attempt some threes, so at least he can make defenders or keep defenders honest out there when he's on the court with Julius Randle.
Absolutely. Got a question for you in the SV Nation. Mm-hmm. Would you attach a first round pick? Obviously not a protected pick, but would you trade as getting somebody interested in taking Julius? Would you give up a pick that would be like a mid-range first round pick in order to get rid of him in his contract?
It would all depend on what I'm getting back in return. If I'm getting a player that I think makes us better now, then I would consider attaching a first round pick. I view moves that are more win now. You try to attach a first round pick to them. I don't think you should be attaching first round picks unless you're bringing in an elite talent or you're kind of kicking the can down the road and using that first round pick as an additional asset to bring in better players. So if we're bringing somebody that I think can help us get into playoff contention, I mean, we're already in playoff contention, I believe, but if we can get to a spot where we're battling to be, a top 3 team, then I would consider it. But I don't want to start shipping off first round picks just to clear salary, because we've already done that to clear off Nerlens and Alec Burks, and we've done that to clear off Kemba Walker as well.
Yeah, it goes obviously a lot more than salary. It has to do with that negative energy that he brings. So hopefully he can keep that at a distance, play great. And like we said, it's a crime. The guy is so talented that I just want his talent to show and all that other stuff to go away. So hopefully he plays hard on both sides of the ball. He's motivated, and he brings a lot of value to the Knicks, and we'll go from there.
Remains to be seen what ends up happening with Julius Randle. I think all signs are pointing to him continuing to be on this team. So if we do end up with a trade for Spider, it's going to be interesting to see how we're going to have all these pieces gel, because I think we talked on it in a previous live stream that these are, some of these guys have pretty high usage rates. So now you're putting them all not only on the same team, but in the same starting lineup. Somebody's going to have to make sacrifices. And, you look at a guy like Julius Randle, who didn't have a great season, a player that's going to have to sacrifice. And also you look at a player like RJ Barrett, who's still developing, and you don't want to cut too many touches from him because you want him to get out there and get more touches so he can develop his game and get better for this team. But you bring in a guy like Spider and have to make those sacrifices out there in order to make things work. So, will those guys be willing to do it? RJ has shown to be willing to make some sacrifices for the betterment of the team. But with Julius Randle, that's still going to be a major question mark.
Totally agree.
So let's jump into the chat, see if anybody has anything to say. Knicks 100 a game. He says, "What's up? How's everything going?" The coolest 718. Salute to all. Soul Tran 68 says he would include the first. The only way he'd give up the first is if it would be for a guy like Kevin Durant.
Yep. Shout out to Arturo Gravino. Hi, Arturo. Hope all is well with your family. Paul Radu, Tony Ward. As we talked about, folks, if you have subscribed, thank you so much. We greatly appreciate on our way to 7,000. If you have subscribed, thank you. Please tell a friend to tell a friend. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Please hit that like and please turn on that all reminder bell so you don't miss out on any of the wonderful content from Sports Vibe TV. Please share the link on your favorite social media platform. And as always, shout out to the best mods on the planet. We appreciate all you do.
Now, we mentioned RJ and him potentially having to sacrifice. But what kind of threw me through a loop was when we have reports from SNY saying that the Knicks could look, or there are more people in the front office that are willing to include RJ Barrett in a Donovan Mitchell trade. And for me, I think that is a non-starter. The whole point of trading for a guy like Donovan Mitchell is to pair him with a guy like RJ Barrett, who we think in year 4 could take that next step. So I just wanted to put on screen comparison players and what they did in their first. And so, Foxy, what were some of your thoughts when you first heard that trade? Not the trade, but the idea that the front office or some members in the front office would be willing to include RJ in a trade for Donovan Mitchell.
Because they didn't select him, I could understand, they don't have that allegiance, but Tibbs and Alan Hahn did a nice little video saying that they really do like him. They respect his work ethic. They think he's a great kid. And like you said, that this year, hopefully it'll come together for him. But like you said, we want Donovan to come here to compliment RJ. If RJ goes, maybe that's a major impact that we don't have to give up, as many draft assets. If we give up an RJ, but as we talked about in a couple of streams, that's a crapshoot. Even if you have a top 3 pick, you have a 75% chance that they'll never be an all-star. So let's keep RJ. Let's see him. As we see on the stats, folks, he's gotten better. Unfortunately, the efficiency is not there. But he has gotten better, and hopefully very similar to that we saw with Julius Randle a couple of years ago, where, he had the great season that you just showed the stats on, but then he went back to last year, which was much more like the years he had before, the great second-team All-NBA season. It's the same thing that in his second year, as you can see with RJ, shot 40% from 3, 44% from field goal percentage, shot almost 75% from the line, and then he had the off-year. So hopefully he goes back to his second-year stats and better this year. And because I think with Brunson and others will be in a lot more catch-and-shoot scenarios, and we'll go from there. But I'd like us to keep RJ. It'd be a crime to see him really reach his potential someplace else that we gave up on him.
I hear you there, Foxy. I believe that RJ Barrett can continue to get better. Do I think he'll be as good as a Donovan Mitchell, a top 20 player in the league? That's still up to debate. But I think if you look at what he's done, he's gotten better year over year, and worked on his game, worked on trying to get better, finishing with both hands, and we've seen some developments in that area. He mentioned that he wants to be better defensively, and you've seen that he's put that effort in as well. And he has solid size. If we can move him, if we keep him at the 2, I think at 6'7", he's got good size. But even if we have to make him a 3 at 6'7", he can still deal with some of these players like a Jason Tatum. RJ was able to battle with him last season. And, I, like you mentioned, don't want to move on from RJ Barrett and see him develop in a place like Utah and become that star player that we believe that he can be here in New York. So if we can just keep that deal to where we're keeping it, where we're giving up players like an Obi Toppin and an Evan Fournier and maybe some additional first round picks, I think that would be the best for this team moving forward in terms of keeping assets on this team for other moves down the line. And I think that'll be a solid foundation for this team trying to be legitimate championship contenders. You have a guy like Donovan Mitchell, young, what is he, 25 years old, multi-time All-Star, and I think he's going to continue to get better. You have RJ Barrett on this squad, a young player in year 4, still has the hunger to get better, and he's working towards earning a max contract, so he's motivated. And you bring in a guy like Jalen Brunson, has defied the odds time and time again, being a late pick and now working himself to a contract that he was able to sign this offseason. Those 3 players are going to be key players that I think we can build around. And if we take RJ Barrett out of that equation, I think long term it would be more so just a lateral move. We would a very valuable trade piece in RJ Barrett, and we would also, I would assume, multiple first rounds in the deal as well. So I don't think we would be winners if we Barrett in a trade for Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah, and we've talked about it that players sometimes when they play with a special player like Donovan Mitchell, their game goes up because when you think about Donovan Mitchell and you think of Jalen, they're very good shot creators. So teams the way they played defense against the Knicks a year or so last year, etc., they wouldn't be able to do that. So I think the looks that RJ and a guy like Randle would get would be much better looks than they ever had before. And we talked about Donovan that he is more than just a great shooter. He was second in the league in pick and roll points last year. So and corner threes, he was like 10th in the league in assists for that. So yeah, I think their games would go to the next level. And you brought up a great point before about Randle, but I heart with RJ also. His game is getting to the hole. And the one area I want to see obviously from an efficiency standpoint, RJ shot a little, basically 41% field goal percentage, 34% from 3 last year, 71% from the line, but he had 3 assists. My big thing from RJ is that he had a shot blocked 86 times 2 years ago, 105 times last year in 2 less games. What I want to see is when they converge, I want more assists for him to kick it out and not try to, make that basket as, have that know what's going to happen, kick the ball out to his teammates so they can make a better shot than him as the defense converges. So I want, as we talked about in the top 30 guards and that of usage, RJ was last in the league in assists and second to last in assist to turnover ratio. So that's a big area from the assist point to RJ for his maturity.
Yeah, I'm big on RJ working on those playmaking skills as well. And we've seen he has the ability to do it. I saw a thread on Twitter, and it was showcasing RJ's ability to find shooters in the corner when he's able to penetrate and get to the basket. So I think that is an area of his game that he can get better at, and I think he has the tools already in place in order to make that happen. So I'm excited for what RJ can bring to this team, and I would be extremely disappointed if the front office decided to crack under pressure and include him in a deal, because there's also reports that there aren't any other suitors for Donovan Mitchell. So if that's the case, there's no reason for us to bid against ourselves. And I think I saw in the chat JBA Mega Montana says letting Obi go is a mistake, and it would hurt definitely to give up Obi in a trade, but it seems like we're going to be we're resigned to the fact that Julius Randle was going to be on this team for the foreseeable future. And in that instance, there's really no space for Obi Toppin, I believe, to get extended minutes, enough minutes for him to make a sizable impact on this team and to get better in his development. Because remember, Obi Toppin, he's only, a year younger than Donovan Mitchell. So he's kind of up there in age when you talk about a prospect. So he needs as much playing time as possible to get better. And we have Julius Randle, we're paying him right around $26 million. So I don't envision Obi Toppin seeing the 25, 26 minutes going to need. So if that's the case, it would make more sense, I believe, to package him in a deal for a player of Donovan Mitchell's talent level and a player that's going to be out there on the court for a much longer period of time. So that would be my reasoning or my thought process behind giving up a guy like Obi, Donovan Mitchell.
I'm with you. We talked about Obi. I think Obi gets better every year, but the reality is he's a monster in transition and from baseline dunks and stuff like that. But he did shoot 30% from mid range, 30% from three, and I think he'll build on it this year. But if there is value, as crazy as it sounds, it's easier to replace an Obi, in a draft and stuff like that. As crazy as it sounds, Farron Hunt is a great in transition. You saw him in person in Vegas. The kid flies. Absolutely explosive athlete. And he's a better defensive player at this point than Obi. So I'm not saying Farron's on the same level as Obi, but if he's not going to get the minutes, if Randle's getting the majority of the minutes, then we can go another way. But you have to give up something to get something. And if Obi's the price, with us keeping an RJ. But having a Brunson, RJ, we'll see who he's going to put at especially if we have a Brunson, Donovan, RJ, Randle, Mitch, and/or iHeart. That's tight, man. That's a really nice. And also, we talked about the depth that we have. We'll see how much depth, but I think if we give up Obi or a Grimes and we still have an IQ and we have D Rose here. IQ and D Rose. If D Rose, minutes management's on Tibbs again, I think he may have one last hurrah in him to play good basketball, but it's all about minutes management. And a second team of D Rose and IQ and iHeart and Cam. Cam Reddish is still here as we know it, folks. It could be very exciting, but also a deep team.
Yeah, you mentioned Farron Hunt as somebody that could be a replacement for. I was thinking get some minutes at the 4 for Cam if we were able to keep him in the trade. That would also be an option for us. So there are some backup plans if we have to move on from Obi when it comes to our backup 4 position. Also, we haven't mentioned there's rumors that Melo has some interest in joining the Knicks. So that could also be something that the front office is exploring. There were, videos of Melo and James Dolan leaving the same restaurant. Was at them out there discussing potential reunion. So if we do move on from Obi, I think there are some contingency plans based on exactly what you said. It would be easier for us to replace a guy like Obi as our backup 4, and that's why we'd be willing to him in a deal. So Foxy, I would like to know your thoughts on Carmelo Anthony potentially having a reunion.
I wouldn't do it. Statistically, he was the 7th worst defender in the NBA by Raptor last year. So on second teams, I want us to be, we talked about getting back that defensive identity, the team identity, that we're a tough defensive team. Those days of defense are way behind Carmelo. The guy he's a chucker, chucker's Chuck, and he's a good shooter, but I wouldn't do it, but there's another thing where it's like, hey, if Fournier is in a trade package, we already gave up Burks, folks. Well, who's the shooters on this team? So Melo may make sense there that we don't really have a true shooter any longer, or Fournier is the only true shooter on this team now. If you look at, RJ shot 34% from 3 last year. Randle shot 30%. IQ shot 34%. This is below league average, folks. 36 is the league average. Obi, as we said, 30%, if he's not here, but Brunson shot 37, so he's the only one. So, and Grimes shot 38%, but we don't know if he's part of the deal also. So there's not a lot of shooting. If Fournier's gone and after we got rid of Burks, who's going to be our shooter? So there is an element of understanding that maybe we want somebody that, could shoot like a Carmelo, but no, he's getting long in tooth, man.
I'd be open to a Carmelo reunion, but only based on what the trade package for Donovan Mitchell would look like. I believe John Talento mentioned it. He said Melo's gonna take minutes from my kids. No thanks. So if we make a trade and we move somebody like Cam Reddish in the deal, and there's no young player that can kind of step up and play that 4, because I don't think they'll use Jericho Sims too much, and I also don't think they'll use Iheart too much at the four based on what we saw with the Clippers. So if that in that scenario where there's nobody else to really back up Julius Randle, then I would be open to Carmelo Anthony being that option because he can give you that scoring punch with the second unit, and he can also threaten defenses, help with the spacing by knocking down. I know there are some defensive liabilities, but you look at that second unit, you would hope Emmanuel quickly is still out there. Hopefully, he can help defensively. Grimes is still on this team. He'll be out there with that second unit, I would assume. And I would assume Donovan Mitchell would here. He'd definitely be on. So I think the perimeter defense, it won't be too much of an issue with Melo here on the second unit. And then you would still have either Robinson, Ihart, or a Jericho Sims there as a last line of defense, give you some rim protection. So I would be somewhat comfortable in that scenario, bringing back Carmelo Anthony.
Great points, my friend. We have a super chat.
Parrish Duggar, thank you for the super chat. He says, I'm out on Donovan. His athleticism is waning to me. I mean, I don't know. I've seen some highlights this offseason of him doing some alley-oop dunks. I don't know if his athleticism is waning now, but that is something you have to keep an eye on when it comes to the smaller guards in this league. Their game pretty much depends on their athleticism and their ability to blow by and to rise up over defenders once they get that step. So once he loses that, he's going to lose a lot of his effectiveness. But I don't think you should worry about that just yet. I think maybe 32, 33 years old, barring any major injuries. What about you, Foxy?
Well, you and I talked about it off camera. Hi, Parrish. Hope all is well with you and your family. And as always, thanks for your generosity, man. You're just wonderful. We talked about using the analogy that he's like a running back in the NFL. He's this uber athletic guy. He's had 5 fantastic seasons. There's a lot of wear and tear on that little guy, that running back, the same as Donovan, Mitchell. There's a lot of wear and tear, and all of a sudden, that athleticism, they start pulling hammies. They start getting beat up a lot. If you look historically, there's not a lot of 6'1" guys after a certain point that, that have a great career or they're hobbling a lot. So, I could understand Paris's thought that hey, this guy, he's explosive and everything like that, but sooner or later, that he loses a half a step, and that's huge in a guy that's 6'1", because of the length of the NBA, everybody's getting taller and longer. But like you said, though, he's 25. He's in his prime. Ask Banchero. He gave Banchero a facial a few weeks ago. With just sheer athleticism and explosion. So I think he definitely has a few years. And if he comes here, I think he has a lot to prove that he does belong in the talk. A lot of people, like we said, he's the 6th best start to an NBA career offensively, points per game, rebounds per game, assists per game of any player in history. So you have to respect that. So I think he'll keep doing it. He'll be 26 on September 7th, Donovan. So I think we definitely, we have him for a number of years and under contract. I think he's the 35th or 36th best, contract. So the contract that he signed is a good contract. So if we can get him, and like we talked about, if we're giving up a couple of, if we're able to get away with, now that Cleveland, like you said before, Keith has dropped out and we're the only game in town. And like you said, Will Hardy's the rookie coach on Utah. They want to wrap this up before they don't want to put a rookie coach, have a soap opera and drama that he has to answer and stuff like that. He's trying to get a team together, even though they'll probably be picking 1, 2, or 3 next year, Utah. Just being cool to a rookie coach, you want to get the drama out of there. So I would not be surprised that if there is a move, that he's moved before training camp.
Do you feel? I mean, reports are we are the only suitor, so that means basically you're saying that by training camp, Donovan Mitchell will be a Knick.
Well, we're the only game in town. I think it's just going to come down to we have an agent in Leon Rose. He knows value. So I think we should praise him as everyone, I think everyone's exhausted. I'm worried that if the trade doesn't go through, they're going to be lambasting Leon Rose rather than praising him and saying, no, value, let the kids play. I don't mind getting a player of Donovan Mitchell's quality, but I'm not going to give up the future. I'm not going to give him God knows how many, like we said, give up two, unprotected picks. We have all these other, give up three of the crummy picks that'll be late first round picks. As we talked about statistically, they'll never be a thing. If we have to give up an Obi or a Grimes, and then let's get on with it. But have a starting lineup of Brunson, and the beauty of that we talked about of Brunson is he played with a Luka. So he knows what it's like playing with a high usage player, and where it doesn't take away from his game. So he'll be complimentary, but that's a scary team. I think it's scared this, in making if we make the playoffs and stuff like that. A lot of execs around the league have said the reason they have an issue with Donovan, if they take a step back, a lot of people saying, Vegas at this point has us winning 39 games. If Donovan comes here, they're saying, I see us winning maybe 7 to 10 more games. So that's a lot of assets to give up. One executive, shout out to Mark Berman in an article he wrote, but he'll get us, to that 47, 50 wins, but getting from 47 to 57 wins. The next tier with the lineup that we have is much harder from us going from 37 to 47. So if we don't have any other additional assets to bring onto this team after losing certain key parts of our young core and then all these draft picks, that we'll have a good team, but it looks like we could be a one and done. But if we make the playoffs, like I said, player of Donovan Mitchell's level, and also, we're a very scary team. I don't think teams would want to face a team with a Donovan Mitchell. If he gets hot, and a Jalen Brunson who can make his own shot, he's cold, man. He's a cold ass killer, man, especially with the game on the line. So the thing that killed us last season was we didn't have closers. Or we had, the guys were, besides them being exhausted from Tibbs' lack of minutes management, it's, you have to have a certain personality. Those guys are killers, man. So this would be a total turnaround for a team.
Want to give a quick shout out to the chat. We've got 81 in stream currently, but we've only got 36 likes. So can you guys do us a solid? Make sure you're smashing that like button and also sharing the stream with your friends if they want to get involved in some Knicks talk as well. Right now we're discussing Donovan Mitchell and the fact that states that he will be traded before training camp. And I understand, like you mentioned, Foxy, they do have that rookie coach, and you really don't want that drama kind of stain the start of his tenure in Utah. So it would be in their best interest to make a move. And I mean, I like that the most recent trade offer that we gave them, where it was Obi Toppin, Evan Fournier, and then 5 picks. Because
I love that too.
Even if you look at some of the other some of the other teams that are in the negotiations, I think it'll be hard for them kind of trump that deal or be willing to trump that deal. Cleveland, they've already backed out. Donovan Mitchell, he put his list of teams that he wanted to go to. Knicks were, of course, atop that list. Also mentioned Miami. We're not sure if Miami would be willing to trump our trade of Obi Toppin and Evan by including a Tyler Hero. Plus, it seems like Tom may be more interested in trying to pry Bam from them as opposed to Hero. So it'll be interesting to see what the deal ends up looking like. But the last deal I saw, I said sign me up for that right now. Obi, Evan, we keep Grimes. We still have Grimes on this roster, who's a knockdown shooter who can defend, be a pest out there on the perimeter. And all we're giving up is Evan Fournier, which I think to me would be a plus, seeing that we're keeping Grimes. Because Evan Fournier, he still has 2 years on his deal, and it would be us the ability to free ourselves from that contract. So that would be the perfect scenario where we're able to use that self-applied deadline of training camp against them and just hold firm with what we're offering right now. And that's just Obi, Evan Fournier, and 5 picks, only 2 of which are unprotected.
Yeah. Hey, we have another super chat from Paris.
Oh, yep. I apologize. Paris Duggar says, look closely at his highlights, all below the rim. I mean, I've seen some from the offseason where he's kind of taking flight, whether that be just playing around in the gym or actually during the pro-am workout. So I'll keep an eye out to see if maybe he's lost some of his athleticism in game. But I think for the most part, he's just as athletic as we've seen over the last few years.
Yeah, and just a shout out to Buzzer Beater as we went off the air last week.
Yes, thank you,
He sent in a super chat, so we just want to say the Buzzer Beater, thank you so much. We appreciate that. Unfortunately, we went off as it came as we saw it, but we just wanted to give you a shout out and tell you how much we appreciate your generosity. And Parrish, the most generous guy we know, he's back with another one.
Yes. Harris Douglas says he meant his 2022 highlights out because of amount of assets.
Hey, Parrish, got a question for you. What in your world is meaning an equitable trade? So if we were going to give up, what do you think? What would you feel comfortable trading for Donovan and or any other, top tier player that we'll get into in a little while? Just real quick, shout out to East Blue Drew, Alton Lee, OG, salute to you, King, man. Knicks 100, Sharice Duncan, John Talento. We appreciate all you guys. Jesco, as always, man. We appreciate all your support.
East Blue Drew says we can get someone later who's probably better for cheaper. Or maybe we'll in this stream we'll discuss some alternative options who it might be debatable whether they're better, but they could be cheaper trade options if we decide to go that route. So Paris Duggar, thank you for the super chat. We appreciate your support. Also want to just shout out Buzzer Beaters super chat from that last stream. He said he has us going 10-0 with Spider, 8-3 without him, and that was during our live stream discussing the Knicks schedule because we do have a very difficult start to the
brutal.
Those first 10 games are going to tell a lot about the way our season is going to go, I believe. Not necessarily the wins and the losses, but if there are a lot of losses, how this team responds to it. I think that's something we all should keep an eye out on.
Yeah, Alton Lee, as I said, hope all is well with you and your family. Says we keep saying Fournier. Utah doesn't want Fournier. Alton lives west of the Mississippi River, and there's absolutely zero interest in Evan Fournier. That's interesting. Thanks for that feedback.
Thank you for letting us know. But we're just going off of what we're hearing reported by the people who are quote unquote in the loop.
Yes, shout out to CAA Mafia. Hope all is well, my friend. And Parrish again has another super chat. God, you're wonderful.
Thank you, Parrish. He says 2 unprotected and Fournier and Grimes. So he would swap Obi Toppin out and put Grimes in the deal.
Interesting. Thanks, Parrish. Yeah. So, wow, I don't know. I don't think that's rich enough for them to do that.
Yeah, I think they would like Obi Toppin. He's a high first-round pick. That's something that they can sell to their fan base as they're trying to rebuild for the future. I mean, Grimes is another player that you can sell to the fan base, but I don't think he packs as much star power when it comes to trying to paint yourself as a winner of the trade. So that's why I think you would expect at least either Obi Toppin or even Emmanuel Quickley, who was a later pick like Grimes. But I think Emmanuel Quickley, what he's seen and the way I think opposing teams view him, they view him as a player that can have a higher ceiling than a Quentin Grimes. So I think those two might pack a little bit more punch in the deal than Quentin Grimes.
Yeah. Geraldine McGyver, shout out to you. North Carolina's finest via the Bronx says, guys, with the amount of minutes Tibbs plays as starters, how long do you think how is Brunson gonna hold up? That's a great question. That's a really good question. He runs his players into the ground, so I think he'll be running Brunson into the ground. But I think Brunson is Villanova tough, and I think he'll hang out a couple of seasons. Hopefully, he can hold up for a couple of seasons under that duress of those amount of minutes. But I think he's gonna play him like crazy. I think he'll play him if he could. He'll play him 40 minutes. So we'll see. And but that's one of the things. If he doesn't, maybe one of the beauties of still holding on to D Rose because I think he'd feel comfortable resting Jalen with D Rose a lot more than bringing in IQ at this point.
Unfortunately, that's the case. But yeah, I think Jalen Brunson will be able to withhold the stress that there is from playing for a coach like Tom Thibodeau. So I think he'll be fine. I don't think he'll bear down, at least not at the beginning of this contract. I think if you are concerned about that, you're probably worried about that maybe in the year 2, year 3 of the deal. I think I think he's a tough guy. I think he's a guy that's built for. He has a powerful base. So I don't think he's gonna have any issues when it comes to workload. I think he's someone that can be solid or someone that we can rely on long term.
And John Talento, New York Knicks, and mod extraordinaire said 4 firsts, 2 unprotected, Fournier and Grimes. So I think that's ballpark where a lot of people think that if it does go down, John, I think that's where it's going to be.
Yeah, listen, if all we have to include in the deal is Fournier and 1 young player, then I'll live with it. Even if
Me too.
Yeah, at that point, say that's a steal for only give up 2 players and 4 to 5 picks that are just a bunch of hope, and you're getting a player in Donovan Mitchell, who you hope one of those picks and if you get something guaranteed in the Donovan Mitchell at 25, you have to look at some of the young guys or the young guy that would have to be included. It's unfortunate we couldn't keep you here long term, but this is just a no-brainer. We're bringing in a guy like Donovan Mitchell that can destroy teams by getting into the paint, knock down the 3, score from all 3 levels, and he can be a playmaker. The only hiccup, the only issue that there might be with his game is the defense. And I think if he's going to be paired with a guy like Tom Thibodeau, going to up his defensive intensity out there I can see him buying in a situation that he really wants to be in. Because I don't think the last thing I think he wants to do is come here, have the fans continue to point out the fact that he's not out there playing. And as the Knicks fan base will do that. We are not quiet. We will let you guys know when you're not standards. Well, I think if Donovan Mitchell does come here, I think he will definitely buy in and commit once again on defense. Mentioned it coming into the league, had a lot of defensive, a lot of things about his game. Defensive pest out there. They likened him to Avery Bradley. So if he can be half of that or 75% of that with what he defensively.
Hey, folks, we mentioned at the beginning of the show that we're doing a test today. We're trying to get rid of the StreamYard gremlins, and we've gone to a Zoom platform working with OBS. But I see Jesco just said, is it me or Keith's mic? I do hear you dropping a little, Keith. So
was that too loud, or was it because better now?
It's good now, but do me a favor, chat. Just let us know if it continues, because, like we said, please be patient. We're bringing in the ability for you to call in through Discord today, so we're trying this new infrastructure, but no pain, no gain. Unfortunately, as you know, technology is crazy. So if you do hear something on, John Talento just said, check your mic, Keys. So we'll go from now? There.
Everything good? You can hear me clear?
I hear you, but I think it's when you talk for an extended period that all of a sudden it drops a touch.
Okay, I'll stay closer to the mic, see if that helps things out.
Yeah, me too. I have it almost down my throat.
Pause.
Hello? Billy Goat says it sounds like Keith is in the drive-thru. Yeah, well, I'll take some fries while you're there, man.
All right.
So, hey, Kaiser So say, hope all is well, my friend. He says, time to move on from Donovan Mitchell trade. Ainge is unrealistic, and Donovan ain't worth all of that. Kaiser, thank you. I think you captured it. I think a lot of the press and a lot of other people they're saying New York fans will be brokenhearted, and it's like, you're not talking to real New York Knicks fans. We have a lot of respect for Donovan Mitchell, but a lot of us are like, we're exhausted from this bullshit. This is like, you know what? If for what you're asking, let's go with the young kids. Let's see, all what they got. Let's see RJ, and this is a key year. Let him go. Let's see what he has. Cam Reddish. Let's all these guys. And like we said early in the show, Brunson, when he comes here with his 22% usage rate, there's a very little touch, meaning there's going to have to be some changes with RJ, the amount of touches, and Randle, but not enough that's going to be crazy. If Donovan Mitchell comes here, big change. they're going to, between Mitchell Robinson's, his touches are not going to really change much because of his offensive game. Pardon me. So if you use his historic usage rate plus Donovan Mitchell's plus Jalen Brunson, that means both RJ and Randle take major hits on the amount of touches. And for a developing player, it's like, what? Let's take a pass. Let's see what RJ has. Let's see what Cam has. Let's see what IQ has. All these young guys, let them play, because we know that you can't really assess as a basketball analyst, as a fan. We can't really assess their floor and ceiling if they don't get significant minutes. So if Obi gets 13 minutes, how the hell are you supposed to know what kind of player he's going to be? So, contrary to belief, fans, and like we said, people from all over the world watch and listen to Sports Live TV. We won't be brokenhearted if we don't get Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah, you're on that one. Also, salute to Buzzer Beater. He pulled up. Buzzer Beater, we apologize for missing your last chat, but we did get to it today. If you didn't hear us discuss it, let us know. We'll circle back to it. But he sent another one. He says, what is it going to take for RJ to really break out? Well, he's going to have to be much more efficient out there. I think once he's able to settle some of those efficiency issues, then we're going to see him be able to take that next step, because we're already seeing him start to work on other areas of his game and start to exceed there. So bringing in a guy, like Foxy said, in iHeart to help the spacing. You have Jalen Brunson, who doesn't take a high volume of threes, but he can knock down the three effectively. And if we give RJ some more avenues and more driving lanes to get to the basket without allowing teams to be in position to help, I think that's definitely going to help build RJ's confidence, and it's going to allow him to take that next step offensively. And then if he's able to become a defensive stopper on the next side of the court, then you're talking about somebody that's going to be elite, potentially a top 10 player in the league. So I think that's what it's going to take for RJ to really break out, both for him to put the time in, a little bit better as a scorer, and also for the Knicks to put the Knicks and the coaching staff to put the right pieces out there on the court for him to succeed.
Yeah, thanks, John. He says, Keith, that you're good now. So thank the Lord, because we want it to be just as good for you.
Yeah, I got to get intimate with the mic, apparently. I apologize.
Exactly. So, hey, shout out to Worldwide L. Hey, folks, if you haven't subscribed for the love of the game, that's the number 4 OUR for the love of the game. Great, between Lawrence, Mr. Mayberry, and Hardwill Jahard. Great takes, great guys. Do me a favor, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. And also, speaking of that, one of their buddies, my buddies, Hector Beauchamp, with the Yankees Morning Brew, he has a special show this week. So I'm asking as a favor to all of, everybody who, Hector and what a wonderful guy he is. So on Tuesday, August 30th, he has Jerry Ferrara on at 11 a.m. So he has Jerry Ferrara from Entourage fame, Turtle, big home, New York homer. So he loves his Yankees. He loves his Knicks. So do me a favor on Tuesday at 11 a.m. Check out on the Nights of Degen, DEGEN, that channel for the Yankees Morning Brew. Please check out our friend Hector Beauchamp, otherwise known as Project Nerd HQ, and I'm sure it's going to be a fantastic show. So shout out to Hector if you're listening, but just wanted to give that shout out to one of our good friends.
Yeah, salute to him. Salute him for getting Jerry Ferrara on the show, like you mentioned, in Entourage, but don't forget, he's also in Power. That's Foxy's face, and I don't even know what Power is.
No, I watch Stars. I just, I watch Heels, so anything to do with wrestling I'll watch. I just didn't watch Power.
Yeah, Power's my show. Power's my show. So definitely support their live stream. Check it out, and also make sure you have your Stars subscription. Support 50 Cent and the whole Power movement.
Yeah. Hey, shout out to Danny Landis. Hey, Danny. Hope all is well with you and your family, your son. You're a good old guy, man. He's been supporting us from day one. Julian Blum, my brother from the Bronx. Hope all's well with you and your family.
Also, want to give a shout out to Jesco. He says, where is it? 1 second. He says, would you rather a spider trade or an OG trade? Keep in mind, OG would be way cheaper, and it would mean RJ moves back to the 2. So that leads us right into the next segment about potential targets the Knicks could pivot to if we're unable to secure a Donovan Mitchell deal. So there's been some rumblings about the Knicks potentially going after OG Anunoby, or even trying to pursue SGA and seeing if the Thunder would be willing to give up SGA and try to tank once again, seeing that Chet Holmgren has gone down with the Liz Frank fracture. So, Oxy, you look at these two players, you look at what OG Anunoby was able to do last season, as well as what SGA was able to do last season. What player do you think would be the best fit for the Knicks? You have, Anunoby, who's a wing, like Jesco mentioned, move RJ back to the two, or you can go after a guy like SGA, who would once again put RJ at the three, which would be similar to a Donovan Mitchell trade. But now we would be targeting a shooting guard that has more so the prototypical size of a two, coming in at 6'5", 6'6". So if you were to go, if you were in the GM chair, which one of these two would you pursue, if any?
It's a complicated question only because if we're balking at the amount of assets it would take to get Donovan Mitchell, it's going to take the same amount of assets to get SGA. He is absolutely a young, he's in his prime, young, don't go by, he shot 30% from three, but he's a really good player, man. He's incredibly talented. He plays defense. So as we talked about Donovan, Carmelo was the 7th worst defensive player in the league. Donovan Mitchell was the 14th worst defensive player in the league. So we won't have that. With SGA, he shot career-wise almost 35% from three. So he had an off year, but 47% career from field goal percentage, and also 80% foul shooter. He's a quality player, but the funny part about it is that I did some research, and there was a trade package that before the Hawks got DeJounte Murray, they were thinking about getting SGA, and the trade was the Hawks get SGA and Ty Jerome, and the Thunder had to give up John Collins, Danilo Gallinari, Kevin Huerter, and multiple first-round picks. So it would be very, very expensive for us to get SGA, and I have no problem with us getting it, like you said, but he's not at the level of Donovan Mitchell in terms of his first years in the league, turning it on like that. But like you said, he's prototype size, 6'6". It changes everything. OG is there's a lot of similarity to what we talk about Cam. He's prototype size, 6'7". He has a 7'2.5" wingspan. So, as you see that from a career standpoint, 37% from three, he shot 36 last year, 47% field goal percentage, career 70%. But the issue is injuries. I wouldn't touch him. He tore, in 2017, he was the number 23 draft pick because he tore his ACL. And, but if you think about it, he's had significant knee, hip, calf, appendix, hand injuries before turning 25 years old. Last year, the last couple of years he's missed 50 games. So that's why they brought in Thad Young. Thaddeus Young at his, to try to from a minutes management in Toronto. So I'm just worried with his muscle. He's very muscular. I just don't see him being a healthy guy. So on paper, hey, that's the 3 and D. But if you can't play, if you have hip, calf, hand injuries, and the calf injury killed him almost all of last year. And he didn't play, if people remember, during the Kawhi run a couple of years ago because of an appendectomy. That's a basketball related injury, but I would not get OG because of his injury history, man. Not at all.
Yeah, the thing is, both of these players, they are somewhat injury prone. They've both dealt with injuries, especially over the last two. But I mean, if I were to pick the two, I really do like SGA as a player. I know somebody mentioned that he's not the most efficient scorer, and they pointed out the 3-point percentage. But I mean, that was a poor year of shooting for him. I think in the years previously, I mean, the 2 years prior, he shot right around 35 and 34%. So he can knock down the three. Not as good of a 3-point shooter, I believe, as a Donovan Mitchell, but he's still a player that can, create off the dribble, penetrate, and be a playmaker as well. He can look to score, and he can also look to find his teammates. So if we are able to go out there and bring in a guy that might be cheaper than Donovan Mitchell, like, I know you mentioned the deal that got rejected, but who knows? Maybe with Chet Holmgren injury, maybe the Thunder are looking to tank some more, and they'd be willing to lower their trade demands, and we can go out there and get him. So if we can get him for a package that was less than Donovan Mitchell, I would definitely go the SGA route as opposed to the OG Anunoby route.
Yeah, I can't see I can't see OKC doing it. If you look at their roster of, Holmgren obviously is out this year with the injury. Josh Giddey, you have Shea, but Poku, Dort, Ousmane Dieng is a project, Jalen Williams, Trey Mann, Aaron Wiggins, Derek Favors, Jeremiah. They don't have guys with trajectories to play at the level of SGA. Those guys are going to be good players, but I doubt any of them will be an all-star or at the level of SGA. So for them to give up a prize player like that would be like front office malpractice, as our good friend Ron Cleveland would say. Hey, shout out if Ron, you're listening. Same prayers for you and your family. So I can't see how you can give up the only one good player on your team if you're okay.
I don't know, Boxer. You're saying that's the only good player? I mean, Josh Giddey has the ability to he
can't shoot for shit. Josh Giddey.
True, but there also are some reservations as to whether SGA and Giddey can play together. So maybe that might be an avenue that can force Presti to look to see if he can get a deal done. Now they don't have the time restraint or the they don't have training camp as something that can kind of force their hands. But if hypothetically, if they were willing to listen for a guy like SGA, and it would take a similar package to pry him from the Thunder that it would be to pry Mitchell from the Jazz, then I would definitely entertain that option.
Yeah, I hear you. Hey, quick shout out to Adele Chapman. Hope all is well with you and the family. Give little Avery, our princess, a kiss. So, so it's going to be interesting. I think as a front office, it would make sense that you have a contingency plan if Donovan Mitchell doesn't go through. But also, I think part of the contingency plan is sometimes the best move you make is the one you don't make. So let the kids play. And right now, folks, as it stands, based on Vegas, we're going to be picking in the same spot approximately as we picked last year. We picked at 11. So right now it's a 12, but it's probably around 10 to 13, and then 23 for the Dallas pick. So we're going to have 2 picks. But as we talked about, if you're not picking top 5, then you're picking pretty much another. If you get lucky, yeah, but your chances are very minute you're going to be picking another all-star at that level. So giving up assets for a player like if Presti does it, there's a lot more to his game, I think, that could, and especially with a Tibbs and an RJ and stuff like that. So SGA would be really nice, and it's crazy to think that we could have had him in the first place if we drafted right.
Exactly. We got another super chat from Buzzer Beater. Thank you for your support. It says, who is your East dark horse, and then who is your West dark horse? My dark horse for the East is probably going to be one of those younger teams, either the Indiana Pacers, the Pistons, or the Magic. I think if you look at some of the young talent on that team, of course, they don't have a lot of veterans, but if those guys can start to gel, they have the young, raw talent to really be a pest in people's sides. Do I think they'll be NBA? I think they'll be playoff contenders. No, and if that's what you meant by dark horse, then I'm probably way off base. But if I'm looking at a dark horse as somebody that's going to enter the season and be a lot better than most teams and most fans had expected, I think it would probably be one of those 3 teams based on some of the young talent they were able to bring in.
Yeah, as always, you're dynamite, Keith. Folks, we talk about elite. Use that term elite. That it's a difference between talent and elite talent. These teams, they've been building. You look at Detroit now. Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey and Durant, and you have Bay and a few of the other guys. I don't think it'll hit this year, but in the next couple of years, you look at Orlando, oh my God. And you got guys like Jonathan Isaacs that hasn't played for a couple of years, finally coming back, and if Fultz gets his game, but Banchero and Franz Wagner and Suggs gets his outside shot going, they're loaded, like you said. And I'm really interested in seeing what DeJounte Murray does for the Atlanta Hawks. Him playing right next to Trey, I think that's a real interesting. I'm looking forward to see what happens there. But great question. It's going to be the whole problem. What we're facing, why we have to look at Donovan Mitchell, I think, is because of that. RJ, we love RJ. The only thing RJ does elite at this point in his career is get to the hole. Doesn't finish at elite level. So the biggest knock on him is he really doesn't do anything elite. And so when you can get your hands on somebody that that has does things elite and also has elite athleticism, you got those teams are scary. And one of these days, like you said, it's going to gel. And Indiana, like you just said, oh my God, what a blink. So now they have, Halliburton, and they have Duarte, and they got my guy Mathurin, who I think could be the rookie of the year. They got Jalen Smith in a great trade. And the thing that's driving me crazy, it's like, LA is going to trade Russell Westbrook for Miles Turner and for Buddy Hield. Why would you do that if you're Indiana? I think there's a lot more value to those, for having a stretch five and a shot blocker like Turner, and Hield can light it up. So that's another team. Indiana, like you said, they have a really good coach. So they could put that together. You got a lot of young legs there, long. Yeah. Something could happen.
And for me, the West Coast dark horse probably would be the Pelicans. You look at the return of Zion, Brandon Ingram. You can see by the recent photo he released, he's been in the lab. Like he hasn't left the gym. He's been there all for the entire offseason working on his game. So that should be exciting for Pelican fans. And they've also got CJ McCollum. They got Herbert Jones. But they've got a lot of pieces on that team that they can really make noise. They made noise last season. They were a very tough out in the first round. So if I had to pick a dark horse team in the West, I would go with Pelicans. And the reason I'm not going with a young team that's going to shock people, because I don't think the Rockets are there yet, even though they are deep with talent. But I think, like you said, they're about 2 or 3.
Yeah, and I think one player that you didn't mention, I agree, you're right on with the Pelicans, that I think is going to have a dynamite sophomore season is Trey Murphy III. That 3-and-D wing the Knicks wanted 2 drafts ago. So I think, you add him in there, and Kira Lewis is coming back from an injury. He's blazing. So if he's 95% of what he was, he's still going to be blazing. And yeah, they got a really good team, but really good team. Oh. Herb Jones is a defensive. That's the thing that kills us. Rokas was picked 34th. McBride was picked 36th. Herbert Jones was picked 35th. And man, we could use a 3-and-D lockdown. He's a lockdown defender. We missed out on him too.
Big time. Oh, I put a poll in the chat. I'm about to close it now. Wanted to see who Knicks fans would prefer them, the Knicks pivot and try to pursue if the Spider Mitchell deal doesn't go through. Hey, that was bars. I'm ending the poll. Let's see what the results are. So we got 41 votes. 56% of the chat believe that the Knicks should pivot and go after SGA if the deal falls through. And then we have 43% saying that we should try and pursue OG Anunoby if we're unable to cure a Donovan Mitchell deal. How do you feel about that, Foxy? Your thoughts?
I'm sorry. I thought I said Trey Murphy. Somebody said I said Troy Murphy. I meant Trey Murphy the third. So
you said Trey Murphy, no?
Yeah, I'm just saying. Knicks 100 said I said Troy. So no, I meant Trey all the way. I thought I said Trey, but I'm a stoner, so don't go by me. So what was your question? What was your question again?
I said, what did you think about the breakdown? 56% of the chat say they would go for SGA, and then 43% say they would go for OG.
Yeah, like I said, OG is attractive. It's like, but old school, man. Before you're 25, if you have that list of injuries and you have that body type, those muscular guys like that, they're always tearing something. The tendons are not meant for the wear and tear like that to hold those big muscles together. So I've always been surprised at the durability of Julius Randle actually with his body type. So yeah, so I can understand, but SGA, I can understand them going for that. And like you said, that size. Oh my God, man, that'd be wonderful having a 6'6" guy like that.
So I put a pinned chat in the comment section. This is the beginning of the Sports Vibes TV Lounge. If you want to join and talk to us on the show, you can head over to the Discord. We have somebody that'll route you to us, and then we can have a conversation, and then we can actually make good on you guys being the third co-host of the show. So jump on, and if not, we can always still do it like we do it previously. Just top it up with you guys in the chat. If you have any questions, you can put that in the chat, and we'll discuss it during this section. So sure everything is good with the Discord.
Yeah, and just real quick, we have 111 people in the chat. We have 60 likes. Do us a solid. We always like to get to that 100 metric. So please, if you have subscribed, thank you so much. Please tell a friend to tell a friend. If you haven't, please subscribe. As we always talk about, this is the one-stop shop for Knicks news, rumors, and analysis. As you can see from the information behind the scenes, we always try to make it enlightening, sometimes controversial with our takes, but always entertaining. But we love the SV Nation. And as always, folks, if you are new to the chat, please let us know so we can give you a proper welcome. And please hit that reminder bell so you don't miss out on any of the wonderful content from Sports Vibe TV. Share the link on your favorite social media platforms. And as always, shout out to the best mods on the planet. We appreciate all you do. I see our friend Ron from Knicks Fan, still Knicks Fans, has dropped in. Again, shout out to Ron and John and Jose, the gang over there that did a wonderful show with Alan Hahn a couple of weeks ago. It's just a wonderful show. He's growing leaps and bounds. Proud of you, Ron, and just a shout out. Great show.
Yep, salute. That was definitely a great show. I was tuned in. Appreciate the banter back and forth between you guys. So keep doing what you're doing. I want to give a shout out to Payback Carter. He says he's new. Thank you for tuning in and supporting. Make sure you're subscribed and you have notifications set to all. That way you're notified when we do go live. All right, let's see what else we have going on in the chat. We surveyed 100 people. Says SGA would be Tibbs' dream point guard. Well, I mean, we already have Jalen Brunson, so operating off ball. But I mean, hey, it's nothing wrong with having two playmakers out there in the backcourt. Gives defenses more things to worry about.
Yeah.
Billy Goat says OG will be a lot better than SGA. I mean, I think that's debatable. As you mentioned, Foxy, there's the injury concerns and things like that. But I think OG can definitely be a solid piece. And I think either way, we would have tough negotiations, whether we're going after or whether we're discussing with Masai Ujiri or, as you mentioned previously, Sam Presti. So it's going to be moving from one hardline negotiator in Danny Ainge to two more in Ujiri and Sam Presti. So
yeah, and as we talked about, there's a price for 3-and-D wings, man. They're just so hard to come by in the draft and getting them. So those guys, and again, OG has a 7'2.5" wingspan. That's why he's so tough on defense, man. So, but let's throw in us old guys with Antonio McDyess and other players. I don't like trading for players that have had catastrophic injuries like a torn ACL in college, and then he has two significant bone-based injuries, and that's really tough, man.
Going on, Prezi the boss says, is he a senior citizen, or did he call somebody a senior citizen?
Well, I'm a senior citizen, so
I hear you. Well, sometimes when I finish work, I feel like a senior citizen because my back and my knees killing me.
Yeah.
Let's see what else we got going on. Keyshawn said they would take less for OG than SGA. That is true. Definitely take a less assets for us to pry OG from the Raptors than it would take for us to try and go out and get SGA. Because you look at the Toronto Raptors. I mean, they might be willing to take on a few more veterans and try to push towards the playoffs with a guy like FEV on that roster, and Scotty Barnes. There's already overlap there, so I think we'd probably be able to get OG for a lot less than we would trying to get SGA.
If we can give up a pick or 2 first-round picks for OG that we know that are going to be in the in the 20 range. Like I said, the Dallas pick is probably going to be 20, 23 or so like that. Mm-hmm. I'd do it in a heartbeat for OG. Meaning, I think that's a smart, I don't know if there's, like we said, there's a lot, everyone's saying, oh, this draft is loaded. I've been studying this draft already, folks. And there are a lot of good guys, but a lot of these kids, they can't shoot in this draft. They're explosive athletes. Oh, the Thompson twins, they can't shoot. So I'm glad they have generational athletic talent. But in the NBA, bro, you better learn to be able to shoot. Cam Whitmore, who I love from Villanova, all these guys, there's a lot of blemishes in their game. So OG's an NBA player. He has an NBA body. That's why when Trey Murphy III came out, we all said it's going to take him 3 years because he won't be able to hold his spot. A lot of guys that come out of college, 3-and-D, that 6'8" guy with that 7-foot wingspan, a lot of them are like 185, 190. NBA is brutal, man. They're not strong enough. So it takes them 2 years, 3 years in that weight room, good diet and good strength and conditioning coaches and stuff like that to get the strength, to play. So OG is already there, man. So I can understand, having a team of, Brunson, RJ, OG, Randle, and Mitch. That's a tight team, man. That's a good defensive team as long as they play. But the biggest thing, like we said, if you look at the amount of minutes that OG played or the amount of games, he missed 50 games over the last couple of years. We don't want that headache.
There was some comment I wanted to get to. Where is it? There we go. I think this is it. How many picks would we have to? This is from Keyshawn. It says, how many picks would we have to trade up to get in the top 10 in this draft? I would say it all depends on where we end up, honestly, where our pick falls. Because if we struggle and we're towards the bottom, not the top of the lottery, if we're like 12, 13, 14, like we were last season, it's going to take that pick. It'll take the Dallas Mavericks pick. And I think it'll take some additional, and at least an additional first. What about you, Foxy?
I think no. I think we learned a lesson. We couldn't get Ivy last year. Mm-hmm. We were at 11, and we couldn't get Mathurin. So we couldn't, even though we were at 11, we had all these assets. We still couldn't trade up and get those guys. So if you get a kid, like I said, Dariq Whitehead out of Duke, or a couple of the other, Cavante George, a couple of the studs coming out. If somebody's picking in the top 4 and stuff, they have a shitty team. So I doubt they're going to give up a really good player that has a much higher chance of being a good player. And then, all right, I'll get your 11th pick and I'll get all these other picks. But because of your team, that it'll, they won't be top picks. So I doubt that we'll be able to move up like we couldn't move up last year. I think that's the lesson that we learned last year. It's very difficult. What we saw a number of years ago, if you're picking 5, like a Duke, Luka, and right. Trey, and you want to move from 5 to 3, that's doable. 11 to 5, 11 to 3, it's not doable. It really isn't. They don't, no matter how many number ones, unless they're like saying this team is really, they're going to be vying for the number 1 pick next year, so I'll make that trade. I don't think the Knicks are the worst. They're in purgatory because they're not terrible like that. They're not great, but they're right in the middle, which is the worst possible place to be because you just can't get that talent.
Yeah, I think top 5 will be difficult. between 5 and 10. I think if we're at 11 or 12, I think there's still an avenue for us to get up into 7, 8, or 9, especially
Yeah,
in a pretty deep 2023 NBA draft. So top 5 might be unrealistic, but if you look at 6 to 10, I definitely think if we're at 11 or 12, there's a team that could drop 2 or 3 spots and feel like they can still get a solid player and get additional assets in order to move.
yeah. I definitely think that the drafts, just doing all this stuff, I think it's already overhyped. That everyone's
So
saying this is a can't miss. 2023 is a can't miss. It's a definitely miss draft. You have a lot of phenomenal athletes, but if you can't shoot, you're not going to have a long career in the NBA, or you will have a long career in the NBA on 13 teams.
I hear you on that one. Foxy with his ether.
Word.
Did Buzzer Beater send another super chat? I think we did that one, right? Because he just sent a chat saying, "Thanks for honoring my super chat?" Question mark. Buzzer Beater, let us know. Are you talking about the one that you had dropped the last time we streamed? Because we mentioned it, but we weren't sure if you were in chat. If not, let us know if you didn't hear it, and we'll discuss it real quick here during the SVTV Lounge. Let's see what else we have going on in chat.
Shout out to Jet Life for Life. Yep. Appreciate the support.
So salute to Adele. Says, let's go Mets. Also, he says, in my head, I don't know what to make of Randle being shredded. Should I be back on him being dependable, or will he be not dependable? I guess is what he was trying to say. I like the fact that he's in shape, so it shows that he's at least committed to something. And if you look at what Tibbs said about him in the 2021, entering that training camp, that Julius Randle showed up in some of the best shape of his life, and that led to him having a phenomenal season. So if history repeats itself, hopefully he put the work in this offseason and he shows up as a better version of himself. So that's what I'm hoping. That's me trying to think positive about it. And either way, even if he doesn't come in and he's not great to start, I think maybe other teams around the league look at him and say, all right, at least he's in physical shape, and hopefully he'll turn it around, and then we can move on from him later on in the season. But I can't take too much from him being shredded, other than that, at least he'll show up to camp in shape.
Yeah, I'm glad he's shredded, but it's on Tibbs. If Tibbs plays him 36 minutes, during his NBA, he had nothing against the Atlanta Hawks. He had nothing left at the end of the season because of the minutes he played. So I'm glad he's shredded, but if Tibbs plays him into the ground and doesn't give Obi the minutes that all of us want, it doesn't make a difference how much in shape he is. He's just not going to be able to deliver at the end of the season, at the end of games, if Tibbs doesn't do minutes management correct.
Let's see what else we got going on. Keyshawn says we was about to give up 3 to 4 unprotected for Ivy. Yeah, that was because we would jump up to 4, and that would have been pretty well at 5 at one point. I think when it comes to Detroit, trying to get him at 4 with the Kings, that didn't work, and we having to try this. Was it vice versa? Detroit 4, Kings 5, right?
Yeah, correct.
So we were unable to get a deal done with Detroit, and then we tried to pivot to the Kings, and they weren't having it.
Yeah, as we talked about, I have no problem giving up picks for a proven player. And Jaden Ivey, I said, folks, I think he's going to have a good career, but he has so many flaws in his game. So if you think he's going to come out this year, and just go crazy, he maybe at the end of the season, if the game slows down a little for him, but I think it's going to take him several years to slow down. But my point being that if you give up a lot of picks for an unproven player on potential, that's a quick way to lose your job. It's a much more prudent move to say, I'll give up all these assets, but I know this guy is an all-star. So there's no potential here other than potentially great.
Oh, Foxy, let's pivot now. Let's jump into the Around the League section of the live stream. This is where we get into some of the bigger news stories circulating around the league. And the first one we're going to jump into is the fact that even though he requested a trade, Kevin Durant will be staying put. Apparently, he came to some sort of agreement with the Knicks front office, and all parties have committed to staying with each other throughout the 22-23 season. So, what were some of your first thoughts when you heard this was the actual, this was the result of that trade request?
I think KD found out that mortgages on mansions are a lot of money, and that I have to pay my mortgage, even so I'm going to have to go back to the Nets. Hey, everybody doesn't have money. Everybody doesn't have players. The Knicks did due diligence and called up, and like they laughed at the Knicks. Hey, we picked up the phone. It was the right thing to do. But yeah, who has assets? I don't think they even looked at Boston trading Jaylen Brown and a few others plus first. So getting equity for KD, the only equity for the Nets was keeping him. That was the smartest move. It was the smartest move for KD. Just shut up, play basketball, and go from there. I don't know the situation with Kyrie. I don't know the situation, with Ben, but KD just, it was a smart move for the Nets ownership, just saying, playing a game of chicken and just saying, yeah, go get a trade, go set up a trade. Nobody could afford him.
Yeah, I'm not too shocked about this either, because if you look at the Gobert trade, if the Nets were trying to, base KD's value off of that deal, it was virtually impossible for them to really get equitable value for Kevin Durant. And it makes sense for him to stay. They're still going to be an extremely competitive team. Kyrie, he bought in for next season, and also they're talking about potentially moving Ben Simmons from being a point guard to being a center. And you look at some of the things on, yeah, you look at what the Warriors have been able to do with Draymond Green. I think Ben Simmons could be a more talented version of that, operating from the center. You don't want him from the center position. He's not going to bang, I think, with some of the bigger centers in the league, like a Draymond Green. But I think on the opposite end, they're going to have to step out and try to defend him as well. And I think that's going to be that's going to be something that I'm going to be, interested in trying to break down, to see how we're going to try to defend them when they have KD, Kyrie, and potentially Ben Simmons out there on the court. So I think if you look at the entire roster, it's still a very competitive team, and they have championship aspirations. They are a team that can actually be there at the end and hold, the NBA championship at the end of the season. So for him, there weren't any other teams that were going to get involved. The Heat didn't have the assets. If the Knicks called, they were going to laugh at us. If the Warriors probably had the only, I think, young players that could have got the deal done, but that's a situation I'm not sure Kevin Durant wants to return to. So for me, I think this was just the only option that all parties had available to them.
I'm with you. I think we have a couple more super chats.
We got one from Buzzer Beater again. Thank you for your generosity. It says, do you guys see a CBA lockout coming? There could be, especially when you're talking about what the owners might want to put into the CBA to kind of lower the chances of something like this happening, where a player with multiple years left on his deal tries to throw his power around and get out of it. But outside of that, I don't think there's too many other grievances between both sides. So for me, if there were going to be a lockout coming, it would be over something like that in terms of player mobility, because I know there's big money coming in, and unless they start to gripe about the revenue sharing, that might be another place where there might be a hiccup. But I think two areas might be player mobility and the ability to request trades while under contract, and then maybe some issues with revenue sharing. What about you, Foxy?
I agree with you. I think that mutually, they're like, there's not, I think everything is, there's not one giant thing that's going to break it. So I think that they'll come to an agreement.
Yes, thank you for that super chat, Buzzer Beater. We also got one from We Surveyed 100 People. Dropped in with a 718 super chat. He says, salute Knicks Nation. Thank you for that. Yep, salute the squad. All right, Foxy, we're going to pivot to another story. This one going to be about Russell Westbrook, or as I eloquently call him, Russell Brickbrook. There's actually some reports now. If we do go out there and make a trade for Donovan Mitchell, there is going to be some impact on Russ and him being involved as a player in a 3-team deal. So this is from Mark Stein in his newsletter. It says, if the Knicks manage to win the trade race for Donovan Mitchell, or even if another team beats them to Mitchell, league sources say there's a decent chance that the Lakers will be involved in the deal. Two future first round picks that the Lakers possess in 27 and 29 are the kind of top shelf draft picks that Danny Ainge is believed covered. Brick Brooks' $47 million expiring contract, and those picks could be the Lakers' entree to a potential 3 swap, depending on the players that would land in LA. Now, if they were going to do a deal with the Knicks, you could potentially see a player like Evan Fournier and also Utah's Bojan Bogdanovic end up on the Lakers. Now, Foxy, if you were a Laker fan in a Laker fan's shoes, how would you feel about this return for a Russ?
I think that the minute they got Patrick Beverly, and all the rumors you heard behind the scenes that, the players really don't dig Russ, or LeBron and everything else, that his days are numbered. So they're going to pull, like we said, a John Wall, if he's traded or whatever. I don't think he's going to be on the court this year one way or the other. So I think they just want to get rid of him and sayonara, baby.
I think as a Laker fan, though, as a team trying to compete for the playoffs, you bring in a guy like Evan Fournier and Bojan Bogdanovic. Could be two players off the bench that can give you some scoring firepower when guys like LeBron aren't out there on the court. So I think if I were a fan of the team, I'd be open to this deal because it doesn't look like you're going to be able to get much for Russ. And I mean, you saw what he was able to give the team last season. I mean, there were some highlights and things like that, but I think long term he's just not going to be a good fit. And what to me was kind of interesting is all of these things started to come out after you saw LeBron James and also saw Russ kind of give their support to him. So they're on record saying they can't wait to see him perform better than ever. And then right after that, we see the news that the team may look to move on from him. So to me, that kind of threw me through a loop.
I don't trust. I knew that the writing was on the wall just watching the games last year. We were fooling around during some of our streams. Like, did you see that Westbrook looked off LeBron and LeBron had a look on like, I look you off. You don't look me off. So, I didn't think there was a future there one way or the other. I was like, that experiment, and that's on LeBron, a front office. And obviously Vogel took the hit, but that was on LeBron getting him there. And he made a bad move, and the chemistry just wasn't there. And Anthony Davis, folks, they gave up a frightening haul to get that guy, and they won in the bubble, but the guy can't stay healthy. He's an elite player. But we just went over OG, why we were concerned. The guy can't stay in the court. Greatest ability is availability. And if you can't play, what the hell's the sense? So, but like you were saying, Fournier and Bogdanovic, shooters on that type of team, they're worth their weight in gold. So, but, they got a dog, but he's 34 years old, Patrick Beverly. So, but he's a better 3-point shooter than Russ. And I can see him. Pardon?
And a better defender.
Much better defender. And also his energy is, infectious of a dog defense, getting everybody together. And, the funny thing is history. I don't think they keep Russ around. If you remember Houston days and stuff like that, Beverly and Russ went at it, man.
Yeah, they weren't too
brutal.
Mm-hmm. And another thing with Pat Bev that's different from Russ, Pat Bev can operate, off ball a lot better than Russ. Russ kind of needs the ball in his hands to be effective, and that does not mesh well with a player like a LeBron James. So for them to move off of Russ and bring in two shooters like a Bogdanovic and like an Evan Fournier, which we know that's the best way to build around a guy like LeBron James. So as a Laker fan, I'd be open to the move. The only thing is you just have to know that if you do make this trade, you're pretty much sacrificing the future of the franchise by giving up those the last two tradable first round picks.
Agree.
Let's see. Jesco, he put a trade offer. He said the Knicks get Westbrook, 27 first, 29 first. LA gets Rose, Randle, couple second round picks, and then we buy out Westbrook and give all the minutes to Quick and Obi. Who says no?
The Lakers. So, I think it was in an article this week, folks, that they just didn't think his game would be complementary to LeBron and the rest of the, So
I mean,
I don't.
you want to be honest, Julius Randle is just a oversized Brickbrook at this point.
Word. That's
Yeah.
really well said. Really well
Honestly,
said.
so if Russ didn't work out next to LeBron, then I don't see Julius Randle being able to do so.
Yeah. Hey, I see our buddy Hector Beauchamp, Yankees Morning Brew, pulled up. Hey, Hector, a little before we gave you a shout out that everybody please tune in this Tuesday, August 30th at 11 a.m. for the Yankees Morning Brew to check out your interview with Jerry Ferrara. So we got your back as always, my friend. So do me a favor again, check out Hector Tuesday at 11 a.m. on Nights of Degen, Yanks Morning Brew. Hey, I see our buddy Justin L. Hope all is well with you and the family and the little one.
Salute, Justin L. Thank you for pulling up. One part of the mod squad. We appreciate your support. CAA Mafia says RJ Max would pay him $37 million. Look at what the Suns are paying Ayton. The Pacers offered him the max. Someone would offer RJ the max. Think somebody offered the RJ the max if he would hit the open market? I think he'd probably get 26, 27 million like Randle money.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think one of the things that we learned about is that talent evaluators around the league don't value RJ, and we've seen it. The best players on their 25 list, all rookie. A lot of things that have come out over the last several years. The evaluators don't. They think everybody thinks RJ is a very good player. So when I say these things, it's not. We're not saying he's not a good player, but they don't think he's an all-star player.
And you got to be a solid player to get $26, $27 million in the league. I know teams are throwing money around, but they're not throwing that type of money around.
Exactly. And this is an important thing that, shout out to Tommy Beer, the cap spike in 2025 changes really the league. So a player earning $38 million next season will account for 31% of his team's cap space. But the cap jumps to $175 million in 2025-26. So a player earning $38 million will account for just 22% of his team's cap. So I see Brock Aller, his brain going a million miles per hour, but you have to take that, strategic long-term planning that, what you're saying is a high salary today is just going to be, is 9 percentage points lower in just a couple of years. So that's a really important fact that the cap spike changes to $175 million, jumps to $175 million in only a few years.
So we're going to see, what was it, a few years ago? Was it 4 or 5 years ago when players hit the market and we saw some ridiculous money get thrown around? That was the year, Luau Deng got crazy money. Who else got Timofey Mozgov got crazy money? That was a wild offseason.
Anytime Timothy gets money, it's a wild offseason. It's like, the eyes never lie. And it's like from day one, it's like, he's okay, but are you crazy? Are you absolutely crazy? Have you lost your mind?
Yeah, man. All right, so Foxy, let's also jump into another major story that was kind of sad, I guess, for Oklahoma City Thunder fans. And it's the fact that Chet Holmgren, he's going to be missing the entire season due to a Lisfranc fracture to his foot. Now, he is still sustained this injury in a pro-am game going up against the previously mentioned LeBron James. So what was some of the things that you thought when you first heard the injury? Because we've discussed Chet Holmgren during our draft coverage, and one of the major issues was his durability. And we saw that the injury occurred when he was trying to go up against a LeBron James who was on a fast break. And one of LeBron's nicknames, or one of the names I've heard him mentioned, is Freight Train. So clearly that frame is not built to try to stop that freight train as he's trying to get to the basket. So are there any long-term concerns when it comes to this injury or that might come to you? Or do you think this is something where he'll be like an Embiid or maybe miss a year and then come back to follow it? Even that was too.
Yeah, that's a great point. So a lot of people forget that, really high draft choices that lost their rookie year, Joel Embiid, like he's just said, Ben Simmons, Blake Griffin, LaMarcus Aldridge. So it's happened to some really special players that have come back and had, happen in careers. But You just brought up a freight train, but we didn't even talk about real fours or fives that he's banging up against. So, hey, first and foremost, he's a young man. My heart broke. He's played his heart out his whole life to make his dream, and boom. When I watched it several times, because you and I talked off air, that's a injury that's more in tune with football players, especially offensive linemen stepping on each other's foot, because it's an injury. It's not on the toes; it's upper foot area for the injury. And the good news, folks, is that the bad news is a season injury, ending injury. The good news is usually it's not a career ending injury. So hopefully he heals. And in that time frame, I don't know his frame, if he'll ever put on strength. He's strong and he's tough and everything. And George and you and I talked about it, but hey, Foxy, would you take Chet Holmgren number one? Nope. I wouldn't take him two. And I was always afraid of that, but not actually, it was a different types of injury. So, yeah, so I hope the kid comes back, but God, OKC, man, they probably said, you're kidding. Oh my God. So hopefully he comes back. And I know you and your friends, your orthopedic surgeon friend and stuff. What do you think?
Well, the thing is, a lot of people have the misconception that there's actually a broken foot. So bone didn't break. In some list fractures, the bone actually breaks, but in a lot of them, it's more so the bone gets displaced. So either a ligament gets ruptured, and now the bone slips out of place. So you'd have to look at the X-rays to see exactly how the metatarsal kind of slipped out of position. Did it go? Did it go anteriorly, or did it go posteriorly towards the bottom of the foot? I guess you would call it dorsal. That's medical jargon. So with that, you'd have to look at the actual X-rays to see exactly what the best course of action is going to be. So I'm going to have one of my orthopedic friends, one of my sports medicine friends, actually come on the channel and talk to me a little bit about the injury to get a little bit more in-depth knowledge. Because me personally, this is something you kind of see more so in sports medicine and things like that. So I haven't seen too many Liz Frank injuries in person. So I'm going to reach out to some of my connects and see if we can get them on the channel to kind of break it down a little bit more. I know it's not Knicks related, but it's something that other people might be interested in getting to know a little bit more about.
Yeah. Knicks 100 said, look at Yao Ming, and absolutely, big guys and foot injuries are not a good thing. Rick Smits, but good news is a lot of us, when we saw Brook Lopez early in his career, he had foot injuries, and and he was able to overcome that, and he's had a long NBA career.
His was of the Jones fracture variety, though, similar to what Mitch has, and that has a pretty high reoccurrence rate. So that's why you saw him deal with a lot of those foot injuries. But yeah, but with big men, dealing with their feet, that's not, their size isn't really normal. So you can expect for their feet to kind of wear down, having to carry a lot of that weight, even though the average male is anywhere from 5'8" to about 6 feet. Got some of these guys that are 7 foot, 7'2". So the human body really wasn't made to kind of withstand some of that, especially when you're doing high effort athletes running up and down the court or trying to withhold your weight. And also, a 260, 270 pound LeBron James who's barreling at you at full speed, and something's gonna break. Not break per se, but something's gonna give. And in this situation, it was Chet Holmgren's foot.
Yeah. So, let's say prayers for the kid. Like we said, we don't want to see any young man's dreams messed. So if his career doesn't turn out, fine. But I don't want to see it not turn out because of injury.
Yeah, Knicks 100, the game had a pretty funny comment. He says, but Lopez out here popping threes. He ain't in that torture chamber no more.
Well said, because he was in the paint. That's where he got hurt, Chet. So right under the basket from the freight train. So Drummond. Imagine him running into a Drummond.
Oh, Foxy, I think we'll wrap it up here. I think we had a solid stream. We got through a lot of topics. Also, everything worked well. No hiccups. This is going to be the normal setup now moving forward. Hopefully you guys like the new setup. Let us know in the chat if we should keep it, or do you guys prefer the other route? Let us know. I like this. I think the audio was good, and gives us a little bit more flexibility in terms of putting on a well-produced show. So let us know your thoughts in the comments. Foxy, anything
And
you want to say
also,
before we go?
and also, you using a Discord. We'd love to take your calls.
Mm-hmm.
So, in future things, do us a favor, just click on that. And we have a mod behind the scenes that helps us. So we'd love to hear your questions or your comments live. So don't be afraid. Join us in the future, asking questions and stuff like that.
Yep. So thank you guys for tuning in. Right now we're at 82 likes. Before you guys leave, let's see if you can smash that like button, get us as close to 100 as possible. We greatly appreciate it. It helps us grow in the channel, and it also helps us get other viewers in. That way we can have other thoughts and opinions in the chat that can kind of steer us in certain directions and get some high quality content for you guys. So make sure, once again, smash that like button. Also, if you're not subscribed, now would be a great time to do so. I think moving forward, Foxy will be streaming the show on at 6 on Sundays.
Yep, we're back to Sundays. Will be as we did last year. So during the off season, we moved around a little, but we're back home on Sundays, folks. So in the six-ish range, you'll see us in the 6-ish time frame every Sunday. So pull up. As we said, we just love hanging with the SV Nation. We appreciate you so much, and also, like we said, we learn so much from you. So it's and also the replay gang. As you know, if you couldn't catch the live chat, we answer each and every one of your comments, and we just love having that relationship with you. So do us a favor and hit us up on the replay gang.
So with that being said, I'm your host Keith, joined always by my NBA analyst Stephen Fox. Thank you guys for tuning in, and till next time.
Love you.